put the rule in there to protect the players, so you can't fault it.
Go. And report.
There's a drama in the background here.
It is what it is. They're the rules at the moment.
I've heard some people say it's not the game I remember and all that. Just calm down. We'll get there.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about it. We're getting confused.
And it'll turn into a game of Oz tag if that's what they want. Well, you know.
I don't believe we should make any contact with the head at all. Be happy to have 11 people on the field in Origin, and I'll be happy with it.
Hopefully the growing pains, will go away pretty quickly.
And we've got a game that's not for everyone. It's as simple as that. It's a tough, brutal, contact sport.
It's forceful. It's off.
And if we want to take that away, let us know. I'll start recruiting different types of players.
Mixed response from the coaches and from fans as well. Gus, from Friday to this point now, has your thoughts, your mood on this situation changed at all?
No, look, I knew once that the edict come down there was going to be a crackdown, as referees usually do. They would go right with it, and if anything, probably overreact a little bit. And there were a few on the weekend that were questionable. But what they're trying to do is to stop the really bad ones. So at the other end of the scale, you have the Pappenhausen incident. So they're saying if we start warning and sin binning and penalising the ones at the minor level, hopefully this one doesn't happen at the back end, To me, they just don't do enough research into the history of the tackle, changes in rules and how tackle technique has changed over time, how hard these players practice their tackle technique in what they're trying to do around the rules of the game in a competitive environment. And it's just not simple enough to say that, players aren't stupid. You can have a scrimmage at training between your first and your reserve grade and have 3 high tackles and 2 crusher tackles. Why would you do it on each other if it could be avoidable? And sometimes these things aren't avoidable. The tackle zone now is such a narrow margin that the margin for error is great. Now, it's easy to say lower your tackle count or lower the tackle so you don't hit him in the head. But the vast majority of our concussions are actually people making tackles, not being hit in the head when they're running the ball. Jake Friend is retiring from the game. I don't think Jake Friend got hit in the head once when he was running the ball. It was all from his tackling technique and getting hit while making tackling. Boyd Cordner the same. Wade Graham at Cronulla, same thing, making tackles with a poor technique. And what I'm saying is if you ask them to lower their tackle range to accommodate not hitting them in the head, then the man making the tackle is going to be more at risk of injuring himself. So it's going to be, and all this comes because of the way we've treated HIA. And it must be impossible for coaches to go into games with benches trying to cover every aspect of what could happen, or at any time during the game if someone gets a bump and has to go off for a HIA examination. And so the coaches managing that, managing the rules, managing the speed of the game, trying to win games as they're paid to do, players practicing their tackle technique, and then in the middle of the season, okay, don't hit anyone in the head today.
So it's going to take
always
time.
Going to happen.
So
it's going to take time.
Yep.
I understand what they're doing, and I agree with it. I had a meeting with Wayne Bennett on Saturday morning prior to his game up there. He'd watched the 2 Friday night games. He was in our hotel. I spoke at length with Trent Robinson this morning. I spoke with 2 other coaches who really didn't want to be named, and we all talked about tackle technique and the history of the tackle. They all agree we don't want to hit anyone in the head, but some of them are just a consequence of the action and the speed of the game and the split-second decisions and where the tackle zone is. It can bump up off a ball, it can bump up off an arm, you get your technique wrong. Like Josh Papali I feel sorry for, even though he knocked that bloke out and he got sent off, because Josh Papali will use that technique a dozen times a game and it'll be effective. But the one time it marries up with a bloke of a certain height falling at a certain rate or stepping in a certain way, and suddenly his shoulder comes in contact with the head, now we get a bad result. Now, Josh Papali didn't mean to hit him in the head. Josh Papali just meant to make that tackle the same way he's done it a dozen times during the game, and delivering the force and trying to dominate the tackle and dominate the play the ball area. But on that one little occasion goes wrong. Now he can potentially 5 weeks on the sideline. That's the one that's going to frustrate me, all right? I just think there needs to be more revision with the coaches and more notice and get the coaches involved about tackling technique, before you just make out a flat rule like that on the weekend. But their aim is to sin bin everyone, and hopefully the bad one goes away.
I worry, to be honest. I haven't had that much of a problem with the Josh PAPALI one. I worry more about the Josh Maguire ones where contact was made with the ball and then bounced up. The Lachlan BURR one where this one here, Maguire hit the ball first. Then gets 10 to Sydney for it. I think that's harsh. The Lachlan BURR one, James Tedesco fell into his chest. That's incidental contact. Like, it's going to happen sometimes. I spoke to a number of fans today, and I never read social media. I read the social media comments on the Nine website. No one's happy with it. No fans are happy with what's going on at the moment. But I do agree with you, Gus. We've got to take the bad ones out of the game. We've got to take them ones, the ones on Pappenhausen, out of the game. They've got to go, and they've got to be sent off, which they were. But these incidental ones that are part and parcel of the game, I agree with what Ricky Stewart said. This game is not made for everyone. We can't keep trying to set an example of what we're going to do in first grade. They should be in under-10s. It's not the same game.
Well, the Ryan Pappenhausen scenario, Michael, it was the photo, back page of the Sydney Morning Herald today. That there is proof for the NRL that they are doing the right thing. That's the pin-up boy at the moment of the National Rugby League, face down, knocked out cold on the ground. 6 games after the warning had come out.
Well, after 3 days in Magic Round, that's the photo they at least want on the back page of the Sydney Morning Herald today. And I spoke to Peter V'landys over the weekend, because on Friday, I, like many people in the game, were starting to think, what's going on here? But he made the point. He said he didn't want to name the player. He said he spoke to one of the senior players in the game. Now, I know a lot of the younger players, like Harry Grant, I think Kalen Ponga, were on social media on Friday, were critical of the rules, but he spoke to one of the senior players, an Origin player, and he said, mate, you need to protect us from ourselves. He said, I don't want my kid one day having some half version of their father because of the head knocks they've copped over the years. So he said, protect us from ourselves. So that resonated with Peter V'landys, and I think he feels a duty of care for the players, not just in regards to the current players, but also going forward in the game, the way that the game is going to be perceived going forward in participation as well.
Send-offs, sin bins. Gus, is there a way with the send-off situation? I mean, the 3 scenarios over the weekend, already we saw some where once a team has, in this modern game, has 12 players on the paddock and they're already behind or it's early in the game, it's almost game over.
If you're playing a good side, I mean, we saw a side in Canberra beat the team running last at the moment with 12 men. They had 11 men at one stage, got to 12 and still won the game. But it was against the team running last at the moment. But then you saw a game later on, which could have been a competitive contest between the Dragons and Melbourne. And once, for the Melbournes or the Roosters or the Panthers are playing against 12 men, it's game over. Like, it's just, the score's going to rocket out. So it's a real penalty. I've tossed up on this for years, and there's always the adage, oh, well, you could send a player out to maim a bloke, and then if you can replace him 10 minutes later, then what's the point? But I don't think anyone goes out to maim another player or do it deliberately. But we have got the problem as a spectacle and as a game that if in the first couple of minutes of a grand final there's one of these and he gets sent from the field, the grand final is over. We've got 80,000 people there. We've got 4 million watching on TV, and you may as well turn it off because
that's a send-off.
Herman clearly didn't get the memo.
That's a send-off 2 years ago, even.
Yeah, it's a send-off. They're the spectacular ones. But the player bounced up straight away. It was the same when Jack Hetherington got Ballantyne. Sometimes they look spectacular, but they haven't hurt anyone. Yet the bloke who got hit with Papali's shoulder was knocked out and he didn't pass his HIA. With all the sin bins and illegal fouls and all that, there were only 2 players that failed the HIA for illegal play on the weekend. Everyone else passed the HIA. There were 3 who didn't pass the HIA for totally unrelated incidents when they were making tackles. Not when they were getting tackled, when they were making tackles.
Gus, you've long said that the coaches, whenever there's a new rule or edict, they find a way to manipulate it, right? What's going to be the ramifications of this going forward? Because we saw a couple of instances there where players are falling. Does it get to the point where coaches start encouraging players to run differently because it's such a harsh punishment for these teams if they do hit the head?
When winning counts, anything can happen.
Well, instructing a player to run.
When winning counts, anything can happen. Like players never used to hold the back of their neck when they got tackled, but now they do because they can get a penalty from a crusher. Whatever they can make work, they will make work, particularly in the big game when it counts at an important time. And why wouldn't he? That's what they're paid to do. All right? They're paid to take every edge that they possibly can. But I keep going back to, and I think, and when I spoke to Peter V'landys today and interviewed him, I said to him, look, I urge you with your commissioners to come to a training session, any of the 16 training sessions, come to a training session and watch the players train and build into each other with the physical contact as they try to learn this technique and perfect it. And we have players at training get stitches after training because they've got a nick on the chin or a nick over the eye. Such is the confrontation at training, and the margin of error is so small. I was at a Warriors training session in January where they brought Ashley Klein up to referee a scrimmage between two teams. There were 3 high tackle penalties and 2 crusher tackle penalties. Why would they do it on each other? They're teammates. So it's a product of the tackle technique and also the player technique in trying not to get caught in a certain position. His body movement in the tackle to get a quicker play of the ball, or to put the opposition, you know, all the movements and all the contrary movements in the tackle process as a product of trying to create the speed of play of the ball or trying to slow down the play of the ball, because that's the whole bit, has created what we have today. It's just not as simple as saying, don't hit him in the head. It's not.
The one thing you do know when Peter V'landys is in charge, that they're going to persist with this. It's not going anywhere at all, Michael. They'll keep going. Do you think that in any way, shape or form they might regret doing it, starting it on Magic rounds?
Well, in their defence, they tried to start it a week earlier. They sent out the edicts to the clubs and they told the referees, you need to enforce this. For whatever reason, the referees didn't enforce it the week before, and we saw Murata Niokore get away with that high shot on Tedesco. So they just went back on the CEO's conference before the game and said to them, the rules that we set, the edict we set out last week, we're going to now enforce it because our referees didn't do it last week. So the timing, unfortunately, did overshadow Magic Round, but they were warned a week earlier.
We're not going to have as many sin bins and send-offs this weekend, surely.
Well, I hope not. As I said, I think they've got to take the incidental ones out. The ones, you know, that are accidental, as Gus said, where it's just contact because it's a high speed, high collision sport. Things go wrong sometimes. I hope they don't put everyone of them in the sin bin. The ones on Pappenhausen, yeah, they're send-offs. I've got no issue with them.
But they're problems because they're going to get arguments about consistency then. You know, what's a glance and what's a blow and what's a sin bin and what's a penalty and then what's 10 minutes and what's a send-off. Arthur and Martha watching on their TV home in Mount Druitt, they can't tell the difference between all that. You know, they need to see everyone's treated the same. And you're going to get more this weekend. You will get more this weekend because players will not change their tackling or can't change their tackling style,
in a week.
Their muscle memory, in a week. I guarantee you it will happen again this week.
That rings to me is what he said about, you know, the front office, what people see on TV is what they're going to do. I can't believe that. Now, I'm involved in junior rugby league 3 or 4 times a week. If a kid sees someone make a high tackle on the weekend, they're going to come out and make a high tackle. And if they are, as a coach or a parent, you teach them the right way how to do it. What Ricky Stewart says is 100% right. This game is not for everybody.
100%.
It's not for everyone. It's an elite sport.
But the league wants it to be for everybody.
But it can't be.
You can't hold the professional game to under 12 standards.
This game has been around for over 100 years.
That's what we're staying in the game. We've got to divorce the professional game from the junior game, all right? Because you cannot hold the professional code to under 12 standards. That's up for the coaches and the players. And the league can be supportive of that program.
Absolutely.
Players can go out to junior league clinics and give this message, and we can coach the junior league coaches with that. But when you come through to the pressure, if Mum's worried about little Joey because of what she sees on TV, stop worrying. He ain't going to be there. He's not coming to the NRL.
Gus, this is all about winning.
Yeah.
At that level, it is all about winning. You have to win.
That was a major statement.
You have to win.
You know, we shouldn't be worried about winning.
You have to win.
Winning's the thing. That's
what
all
you
that counts.
want to do.
Speaking...